Hey, hey, audience, whoever that you might be. This is going to go on the Nightworms YouTube channel. So hopefully you guys will get something out of this conversation that I'm going to have right now with author Christopher Buehlman. Hi, Christopher.
Hello. Hello, Sadie. Pleased to be on here.
Yeah, it is really, really good to finally put a face and a voice. Well, actually, you know what? I have heard you talk before because my first interaction with you, well, it wasn't really an interaction. It was an online event. And I think Brian Keene was there and a few others. You hosted something at a bookstore, I want to say.
Yeah, I've actually, this has kind of been a big year for doing things like that with my new fantasy novel coming out. So they all kind of blur, honestly. I know that I hosted something for a bookstore. I know that I did. So you're not wrong.
It was for charity, so it might have been in 2020.
Oh, then you're talking about the Dark Star books.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Save the bookstore.
That's right. And I was on there with Stephen Graham Jones and Josh Mallerman and Andy Davidson and Elma Katsu and and John Langan. It was a great time.
That was the first time I'd seen you and heard of you, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's cool! Like, I want to know this person." So I followed you on Twitter right away.
Yeah, and I really only know you from your Twitter presence. I really enjoy your posts. I really enjoy how good you are to the horror community, and I also enjoy how very little bullshit you take. And that's a lovely
wow, that means a lot to me because there is a lot of bullshit. Let's just put it that way.
No lie.
Anywhere there's a community of people, there's bullshit, right? Because humans are messy.
Yes, extremely.
Yeah, so the fun thing is on Twitter, I'm not sure if I saw your tweet or you saw mine, but we were reading Rosemary's Baby at the same time.
Yep. I remember that. And I always, I've got this recent tradition of taking the Halloween season, and in October, I will read at least one classic novel that I've always kind of meant to get to. Last year it was The Exorcist, but I read for the first time.
Oh, I read The Exorcist for the first time last year.
Hilarious.
That's so cool. Yeah, I decided to take all of October and just dedicate it to some classics that I hadn't read. So I read Rosemary's Baby first, and then I read Psycho by Robert Bloch. And then I tried to read Legion by William Peter Blatty, and it was so boring.
Oh, no.
I did not like that at all.
Now, let me ask you, when you read The Exorcist last year, did you read it in print or did you listen to the audio?
I did read it in print, yeah.
For anybody listening out there, if you want a really good audiobook experience, William Peter Blatty himself, before, he passed not long ago, and a couple of years before that, he recorded the audiobook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and as an author who's also a performer, I now get hired to read my own books. But they're separate skill sets, and
not everyone can do that.
It's a very separate thing. And let me tell you, Mr. Blatty must have had big theater chops, because that's one of the best audio performances I've ever listened to.
Wow.
When he's doing Burke Denning's voice coming out of the little girl as the demon, you will, if you don't get goose flesh, then you get goose flesh.
I should really try that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and you said that you also did audio for Rosemary's Baby.
Yes, yes, I did, and it was actually Mia Farrow who read it.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, she was great in the movie. I mean, we'll talk about the parallels to the movies too, or the movie, but I had this really old vintage copy that I planned on reading. But parts of it were kind of falling out in chunks, the glue was just kind of falling out. And then it's not very photogenic. The title page is really boring, I think. It's kind of boring. And then there's nothing on the cover, and the spine is actually really boring too. So I didn't bookstagram picture this. I said I just kind of didn't read it either. So I just bought like a Kindle copy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they had different tastes, like especially in the like 60s and 70s. A lot of that stuff, in 50s, a lot of that stuff was very minimalistic. So that would look perfectly at home in a shelf of like monochromatic hardcovers.
Yeah, and it did have a dust jacket, but that was falling apart, so I ended up throwing that away. Yeah. Some old books don't hold up very well.
Yeah, it depends. Just like people, it depends on how they're cared for.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into it a little bit with the conversation. Like, I first of all, because I had seen the Roman Polanski movie, and we'll just preface it with the fact that Roman Polanski is like probably a garbage human. Like I didn't do like all the research on his story, and it was brought to my attention through Twitter. So I did kind of like Google it and figure some stuff out. So we'll just preface the movie situation by saying that Roman Polanski did some bad shit.
Yeah.
So there's that. So I had seen the movie, and Mia Farrow was like totally starring in my head while I was reading this. Was she in your head too?
Well, that's hard to avoid when it's her.
Yeah, she's reading the book.
But but although she only did the recording not very long ago, so it is later life Mia Farrow reading the book, which gives it an interesting layering, because the narrator is not the main character in this case, because they're separated by decades.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because she has like a very mature voice versus like a very young woman just getting married and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Like, that Mia Farrow, the actress, at who she is now, would never take the shit poor Rosemary has to take. So,
yeah, that was actually, when I was thinking about how I would classify this book in the subgenres of horror, I probably would tell people that it's more of a thriller. Like it does kind of teeter into straight up horror towards the end. But for the most part, the setup was the longest part of the novel, which was mostly just gaslighting, like Rebecca.
Yeah. Do your viewers, do we already have like spoiler alert warning on this conversation?
I will put spoiler alerts warning, but so let's definitely talk about it, because it's an old book and an old movie. So
sure, if you've waited this long,
yeah.
I can't go on Twitter because I don't want to find out what happens in Psycho.
Yeah. No, it's not dire right now.
Yeah. So yeah, it does set up, but it does such an I would say that from my point of view, it does easily qualify as horror, because it does such a good job of establishing dread. There is the dread is so thick you can cut it with a knife. Even when they go in there and they see where that piece of furniture was moved.
Oh yeah.
And so something's a little wrong with the apartment from the beginning, and you've got the history of the apartment with finding a baby in a dumpster and stuff. It's just bad stuff happens at the Bramford. So
yeah, that is true. I think it would be also like classified as like cult horror.
Oh yeah.
So definitely like there's some cult elements, even though that's kind of like hinted at towards the middle of the book with, you kind of have your sneaking suspicions, but it's not really like really, really hinted at until her friend Hutch kind of comes into the picture and he starts questioning things as this like older, more mature, wiser friend.
Yeah, and that is always the last thing that somebody who's being predatory wants, is an older, more experienced human on the scene to sniff out ill intent. So Hutch must be dealt with. That's one of the things that's so terrifying about this book is the fates of the incidental humans who just happen to be collateral to the story. Like that poor actor who beat Guy out fair and square for a part. struck blind. That is straight up biblical. He's blind, and Ira Levin doesn't waste a word. I mean, because there's so much foreshadowing in there, but some of it, if you're not paying attention, it'll go right by you. But Guy says, well, yeah, it's a hell of a way to get the part, but now I've got it. But it's a hell of a way. There are many turns of phrase like that I found in the book that I just love.
Yeah, it's like one of those things like when you know what you know and then you can go back and kind of like reread through some of the things. Like it's kind of bizarre how much Guy was willing to just kind of be swept up in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I think my favorite part of what Ira Levin did was that he didn't heavy-handedly like make this marriage look so bad to where she was, in a position of like real obvious abuse. It was very subtle manipulations. And they actually had like a really healthy marital life apart from some of this other stuff that was going on because they were having like a healthy sex life and they were enjoying each other. There's lots of like back and forth joking around. There's lots of like, even though he's much older than her and she's younger and feels this like intelligence deficit, there's still this like she's in awe of him and he is just like really in like awe of her too, like of her beauty. And I don't know, it was more innocent than just like he's the bad guy and she's, the victim. Does that make sense?
Oh, it certainly does. And I would say that on the surface, their relationship does not differ much from what you would think of as textbook relationships of the period. They're paternalistic. He's the breadwinner. She's going to be trying to find things to occupy her time and hobbies and things like that. But I don't think that it was reciprocated by him as much as you got from it. I got from it that he was incredibly narcissistic.
Oh yeah,
and he was. I don't think that while he recognized that she was an attractive person, and certainly was attracted enough to her to engage in their robust sex life, I don't think he saw her beyond that in any way. The first thing we see him do is finding a pimple on his own face.
yeah.
So Levin's immediately showing us what he's concerned about.
Yeah, you're right. And also there's some really good indicators later on that he's got some weird ideas about some things too, because like after the cult kind of starts coming into the picture and she's drugged and then she has that like dream where you're not really sure what you're reading, like you're not really sure if this is real or if she's like lucid dreaming or whatever is happening, a drug induced thing. And then afterwards he kind of tells her to cover up the whole thing, like, oh well, I kind of like we were drinking and blah 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 and I just had sex with you while you were passed out.
Oh yeah, and
he kind of liked it. Is what he was hinting at.
Yeah, it's incredibly uncomfortable now because, like, maybe back in the day that was, well, you've signed the papers so they can do whatever they want to you, but they didn't have the term marital rape back then. That's kind of the territory that encounter was on. But so was it? Yeah, and she was all scratched up from it.
Yeah. I mean, that scene was way more graphic than the movie. Like the movie did hold back a little bit there was like a lot of chanting and I remember the faces, kind of the camera like showing all the faces in a roundabout way and stuff. But all those people were like buck naked and she was raped by the devil. Like that's a lot.
One thing you got to give the devil is he did bring some game because you got a little foreplay going on. He does that thing where he like caresses her all down her arms and then goes and touches her area.
Yeah,
so, he's not just
that was like really chilling.
Oh yeah, totally. But hey, he's trying.
Well, I mean, yeah, and from that moment on, Like, I think the downward hit through the climax and all the way towards the ending is just the most fast paced, like, bingy horror. I like could not stop reading. Like that the whole third act, well actually it was like, yeah, from the middle of the second act to the third act was just insane.
Yeah, once it goes, it goes. But I'll tell you something. I'm a real big fan of the buildup. I loved I loved the Castevet couple. They were
Yeah.
so at first kind of charming and a little tedious, but as they began to get more controlling, it was really scary, you know, like they're not going to let her see other doctors. They're going to make her drink this shit they're getting from their herb garden and blending
Right.
up for her, and they won't leave. They want to watch her drink it first, and it's all under the guise of, oh, you know, you've been tired. I just want to make sure you're okay, you know, kind of stuff. But they're so manipulative and controlling, and it's stomach turning, really. Um,
Yeah. I mean, he starts off too. Ira Levin starts off with that horrible suicide. Like, or she
oh
was,
yeah,
like, so, and wasn't that girl living with that couple?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
she was
right
a
off the bat.
yeah. So this lovely old couple, they took in, you know, an addict. You know, what was her name? Was it Gina something? It was
Yeah.
she had a,
She had like an Italian last name.
I bet that's what. I wonder how many conversations there have been in the last 50 years about that character. She had a. It was an Italian last name because it was a tough one, but yeah, that was her laundry room buddy, and she was wearing that messed up little amulet with the
Yeah.
tannis root stuff in it.
So maybe she couldn't get pregnant. Like that was like a thing right off the bat where I was thinking, like, because I already had known the story obviously from
Huh.
watching. So I was wondering, like, maybe that was their first attempt at trying to have a devil baby.
You know, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't considered that. Maybe she was the first run at it, and she just couldn't conceive. Or yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because that starts right off the bat, and it's just kind of like glossed over a little bit. It's just not necessarily. I mean, they're very traumatized by it at first, but then it kind of like goes to the back of the reader's mind as things kind of progress in the story. And I'm like a huge fan. I said this in my review, but I'm like a huge fan of bringing in that, like we were talking about Hutch, is like bringing in this person to kind of like for Rosemary to bounce things off of, and just be like, oh yeah, there's this room with like these black candles and there's this doctor that they want me to see and like I have this like horrible pain, but the doctor said it was fine. And we get to, as an audience, put things together through Hutch's doubt and conversations with her.
Yes, and I really like, yeah, and we like Hutch. You know, he's very no nonsense. He's
Yeah.
very friendly. He's very smart. Um, there's a trope in horror that I really enjoy, and that he fits. I don't know if it's got a title in discussions, but you know, I would call it like the would be ally, or the doomed ally. That'd be a better way to put it,
Yeah, Doom.
because it's one of the best devices. Like, you got people being chased through the woods and they're all alone, and here come the hunters, and there's the park ranger, and he's armed, and he's got
Yeah.
a radio, and he's going to help him, and he starts
Yeah.
talking to him, and he's concerned, he's on board, and then bang, somebody shoots or stabs him, or a bear trap gets him, or whatever, and he's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a favorite trope of mine too. Like he kind of reminds me of like Dick Halloran from The Shining, because like
Yes.
he's just this kindly guy. He knows about the supernatural gifting,
Yep.
he's kind of there to bounce ideas off of with Danny, and you just know in the back of your mind, like something bad is going to happen to this man, or he's going to like be that final like rescue, which he does in the book, but not the movie. But, really, really cool character that you just kind of fall in love with and you don't want anything bad to happen to him.
Yeah.
That was
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, I, I really enjoy how they look at the themes of patriarchy in this story, and the way that she is. Oh, and you said earlier, you were talking about how Guy gets swept up in everything, and there's the element of the Faustian bargain that he's making because he's promised a career and it's delivered. I mean, his career immediately starts to take off when he
Right.
takes up with the Castovitz. But another layer to this is that she's got her own Faustian bargain going on because she wants that dream magazine image home with her handsome, successful husband and her large kitchen in her high status apartment complex. She
Yeah.
wants it so badly that she's willing to give up whatever she needs to give up for that, until the trap is sprung.
That's true too. I mean, that's really evident like in the very beginning how they're all set to like rent some apartment and then she moves to this other place. Because yeah, she's definitely after that like prestige of living in this like better place. And she actually was kind of an enigma too, because she doesn't really find her voice and her agency until much later. So it's really just kind of frustrating. And it works in today's modern world as well with all the pregnancy information that is available to women and how like conflicting it all can be. Like, I really love the timelessness of like, oh, drink this medicinal herb and don't take these Western pills. And, you know, there was just all of that was present and it still is today. Like, it's still super relevant and your friends are going to have all this differing advice. And, you know, they were like, wait, you have pain like every single day? That doesn't seem normal. And then the doctor is like, you know, playing off of that, being like, oh, don't listen to them. What do they know? Oh, just like so much mind fuckery for Rosemary.
So much. And then again, she finally almost finds an ally again in the other doctor she finally gets to. But by then, she's so freaked out by everything that she doesn't know how to be chill when she goes in there and she starts going off with her conspiracy sounding shit first thing. And he's like, whoa, hold on. And he knows and likes Saperstein, the guy who's controlling all this.
Right.
That's another thing that's so insidious about this is that this little cabal is so high status themselves, and what they do is so secret, and the secret is so well guarded. No one's going to believe any of that shit at all for a second.
Right.
So as soon as she tells the new younger doctor that she should have had that she had in the first place and should have kept,
right,
as soon as she tells him, "Oh, well, Saperstein's in on this," he's like, "Wait, Abe Saperstein?"
Yeah.
And it's done. She is now just a crazy person to him.
I know. It really played off of that whole like women hysteria, you know, thing that's so frustrating, you know, how she's like trying to tell the truth and these men just like kind of gather the troops and link arms and are just like, she's done for, you know? I mean, it was just bone chilling.
And it makes me think back to historically how there were times in various societies where, you know, of course, virginity was in such currency for matchmaking. There were times where if somebody took you and kidnapped you and violated you, then you had to marry them because you'd already lost the thing that made you valuable.
Yeah.
And this kind of reminded me a little bit of that, this idea that she gets so badly violated and so badly manipulated. And in the end, it's so horrifying that she ends up getting her mind right. You know, it's a little bit like the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you know?
Right.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Broken.
I mean, the ending is like really tragic. I mean, and so creepy. Like, the way that the Ira Levin like describes the baby and like the bassinet and the room full of people, like it's just so like exhilarating as a horror scene, you know, you're just like, oh man, this is the living end. And then so I'm going to ask you, like, do you have intentions of reading on past this book to the Rosemary's Son? It was like, it's not really talked about at all, but he did write a sequel.
No, I don't feel compelled to do that. I mean, I'll tell you, first of all, let me just say that, and I don't know if we've actually put this in words yet, and I don't know if you feel the same way that I do, but I expected this to be good, but I was pleasantly surprised at just how good it is. It is one of the most economic novels I think I've ever read. I
Yeah,
mean, nothing is wasted.
that's true.
And it is pitch perfect from beginning to end. He knows, as an author, he's got such a confident hand. He knows what he wants us to feel, and he just leads us by the nose right into this hellish conclusion. And it's a masterpiece, I think.
I think so too. I rated it 5 stars. I was thoroughly impressed with just how solid and how lean and mean, and like people will say that it has like a slow burn, but no, I think that the whole setup is integral for really pounding down the gauntlet like afterwards,
Yeah.
just like watching this demise of the marriage and of Rosemary and just this horrible situation she has found herself in, and then at the end, the compromise. It's just like it's so perfect. Yeah, I think it's so perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really want to go on and read the sequel just for fear it's not going to measure up. And life is short, and I'm a kind of a slow reader, so I have to really ration my reading time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I so for my vintage horror, I can't remember if I was telling you or if I told everyone. Now I can't remember what I was saying about like when I was reading vintage horror in October,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, so I read Psycho, and that was another 5 star for me. And then like we were, and it's short too, lean and mean. And
Mhm.
then we were talking about The Exorcist, and I read that last year for the first time. Thought that was a 5 star read, but Legion kind of fell off the rails for me. So that's a sequel that I don't know for everyone that's going to land. For me, there was like too much like religious rants going on in there. There's like a character in there that like has a religious rant like every 5 pages.
Yeah, yeah. It's clear that he's coming from a position, coming from the position of being a person of faith, writing this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to be careful, whatever your perspective is, whether you're a person of faith, an agnostic, a straight up hardcore punk rock atheist, whatever it is you are. It behooves you not to commit author intrusion. Um, and to feel like, make the reader feel like you're trying to force your point of view on them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the closest I wrote to a religious book was one we talked about, Between Two Fires, and it I approached it as if I were writing something in a mythological world where that mythology happened to be true. So, for the purposes of that book, medieval Roman Catholicism, with everything about it that's frightening, and some of the things about it that are comforting with the ritual elements, is effectively true. But I'm not coming in as an author saying this is the world. I think I make it clear enough that this is written as if the medieval mythology of the Catholic Church, as it was represented in 1348, was
Yeah, I really like that. And that's on my TBR. So I want people to know like I have that book. Christopher was kind enough to send me a copy. That is definitely on my list of books to read. But you also have, how many novels have you written this far?
um, that is one of 5 horror novels that I've written. But I just in May, my first fantasy novel came out, The Black Tongue Thief, that came out with Tor.
Oh yeah, I saw that cover. That looks great.
Yeah. I'd written 5 horror novels in a row, and I took a break for a little while, and I was learning television writing. I ended up writing a short segment for first season of Creepshow. I wrote the one called The Man in the Suitcase.
Oh cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even
Um,
know that. That's so cool.
yeah, yeah, I'm really proud of it, and they did a great job. Oh my god. The director, David Bruckner, who's one of my favorite directors, did that. He's the guy who directed The Ritual.
Oh,
Um,
The Ritual. Yeah, that was really good. That was a good adaptation.
Yeah, and he also consistently, when he's in a horror, he's done a lot of short films, and whenever he's in a horror anthology, he almost always steals it. Which was the case in VHS, because he had the one, oh, I can't remember the name of it, but about the slightly date rapey dude bros who go to the club and they find this drunk girl and take her home, and she turns out to be a lot more than they bargained for.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but that was Bruckner, and it was wonderful. He's
Well,
great.
I'm like seriously like making mental checklists in my head of everything. I mean, the Creep Show is only on Shudder though, right?
Yes, but it's easy enough to access episodes through Amazon Prime or whatever. So
Oh, and I do have Amazon Prime, so
yeah.
oh, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, because I am starting to dabble more into horror movies. I have watched a lot of like classic ones, but like newer horror, I don't know. Like it really depends. You know, like Hereditary scared me off horror for a while. Like that, and I know that that didn't really scare some people, but like that one really, really fucked me up for like a whole year. I didn't watch anything that was even remotely scary. So
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a scary movie. That's make no mistake. That is a scary ass movie.
Yeah, no, I slept with the light on after that. I was like definitely visualizing like Toni Collette like hovering in the corner of the bedroom. Like it just wasn't good.
Oh my god, and when the one is upside down and banging on the attic door, jeez,
Yeah, or like there's so much in the last like 10 minutes. And it was funny because I was like sitting next to like complete strangers, and both of our husbands were like engaged with what was going on the screen, but her and I were looking at each other like this is not happening. Like we want out. Like I wanted out of that theater so bad, but I just like stuck it out for the last 10 minutes. Oh, it was intense.
Ari Aster's, I think he's kind of the best new thing in horror right now. Midsummer, did you see that?
Yeah, I actually regretfully I did see that.
That'll mess you up too.
Yeah, that one wasn't as bad because I felt like it had like some other a different theme going on that I could deal with, and it wasn't as I mean it was bleak, but it wasn't bleak like in the same way that Hereditary was.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
One of
grief horror is can be really tragic and awful.
boy, and he hammers that. He did that so well. But one of the things about Midsummer that I loved was the color palette of the
Yes.
movie was
Yeah.
bright. It was
Yeah.
a bright horror movie, and it was very effective.
Yeah, it was like a middle of the day kind of like horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have like talked for a whole 32 minutes and it doesn't even feel like any time at all has gone by.
Yeah, agreed. This has been great.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And I think it's fun to just kind of like process through, especially classic horror that a lot of people have read and everybody has a take on it. Like when I posted that I was reading it, I was just blown away by the comments of like how many people just love that story. Like SP Mikowski was like up in my DMs being like, I want to talk to you about this. I like wrote an essay about it. Like people were just like, I have really strong opinions about this. And yeah, it totally delivered for me. I'm glad I read it.
Yeah, same here. And what happy happenstance that we both stumbled across it at the same time.
Yeah, I was like, I need to buddy read this with you, and then we need to talk about it. It'll be fun.
Yep.
That's great.
It was a good time. Thank you, Sadie.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me to chat about it too.
Anytime.
Okay, well, bye everybody. I'm going to hit end broadcast. Christopher, just stick around for just one sec.
Sure.